Hey, today I'm talking about Squad, a young adult graphic novel by Maggie Tokuda-Hall and illustrated by Lisa Sterle, or Sterl. Sorry if I got that wrong. I'm going to say the names how I think they're pronounced, and if they're wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments. Actually, I originally found this book on TikTok when one of the creators had advertised it or made like a TikTok talking about the book, and I'd added it to my wish list and kind of been waiting for it to come out. I'll talk about plot, but this is like essentially a supernatural werewolf teens book with an underlining LGBT plus romance. I'll include timestamps to flip through different sections, and I wouldn't consider myself necessarily the demographic the author had in mind, so these are just like my thoughts and opinions. So yeah, let's get started. This book is essentially a fish out of water meets girl in a new school type of introduction. I'll keep spoilers light, but there is plot relevant info in this section, so just move forward with caution. Becca had just moved to a new town, or San Francisco, so suburb or whatever. I don't really know how cities work, with her mom. The book frequently points out that she's not like a typical teen and a bit weird. I don't know why, but that's who she is, I guess. Upon first reading, I thought Becca may have already been a werewolf at the start of the story, and that's what made her weird, but it's quickly established that she's not. She's just a quirky teenager, I guess. She makes a number of friends on her first day. Firstly, she befriends her lab partner, and then the school's like elite cool girl squad, Marley, Ariana, and Mandy. I'll talk about them in a bit. I was afraid this would be like a Mean Girls approach to the plastics and the rebels, but thankfully it doesn't. The biggest spoiler I can give, I guess, is also written on the back of the book. It's that her friends are werewolves, and they go after guys they deem the worst of the worst, which in their world, that's like Southern California, I guess, are sleazy high school boys, specifically predator Jews and cheaters. The squad recruits Becca into joining their pack, which goes well until it doesn't. I found that the plot followed a very step-by-step process and was pretty clean overall. Nothing surprising happened, but it didn't really get boring either. I also want to mention that the werewolves don't appear until almost halfway through, which lets the characters breathe a little bit and have a bit more flesh on their bones before we're introduced to more monstrous elements of the book. Okay, I'm going to move forward and talk about characters. I'm only going over the main cast here. There are a few other characters that I could bring up, but I'm afraid of making this video too long or hitting like spoiler territory for the main twist. Okay, so Becca is the main character in point of view. She doesn't leave a whole lot to be desired. I didn't have any problems with her as a main character. She serves her purpose as the MC well and moves the plot along. I think sometimes she could have had a bit more bite or personality, but she's the newest member of her little clique or pack or whatever you want to call it, so she's understandably withdrawn in decision making. She's also gay, which for me doesn't really matter for characters, but if you're looking for an explicitly LGBT representation in a supernatural story for young readers, then she's a good option. Marley is the second newest werewolf in the pack. She's flirtatious and a bit airheaded. She sometimes comes across as insensitive to me, but it doesn't seem malicious or rude. It's just she'll say things and then it's kind of like, oh, okay. I think she fits well with the glass half full type too. She's kind of a ray of sunshine in her sometimes gloomy group of friends. She's probably the weakest character of the main quad for me as far as their group goes, but mileage will vary. You may like her a lot. Ariana serves as the pack leader. I don't want to compare this too much to Mean Girls, but she's a bit like Gretchen Wieners. If you read the book, I hope that reference would make sense. She has the power and control she wants, but the waters are pretty unsteady as far as leadership goes for her. I really like the character, and I was pretty happy with her journey throughout the book. The character of Mandy is a speak your mind kind of girl, and again, I really liked her because she worked throughout the book. She knows what she wants and makes it work. She became a werewolf around the same time as Ariana, making them the veterans of the group. She makes it clear she isn't afraid of Ariana and helps to rock the boat throughout the story. Okay, so now I'm getting to my favorite area of graphic novels, which is the look and feel. I like to drop some panels as examples. I don't know if YouTube will let me. I'm not monetizing this, so hopefully it does. I don't even know if I can do that. Anyway, Lisa Sterl is a great illustrator, and I think she did a really nice job. I haven't read anything she's illustrated before, but when looking her up, I saw that she did covers for Glow and Gem and the Holograms, which are two franchises that I'm a big fan of. The colors also work well, with Sterl balancing both light and bubbly high school scenes with like clearly night shots and environmental settings. The tone felt very 70s and 80s with heavy uses of red, but there's really good contrast with vibrant pinks and blues and neon colors. When looking Sterl up, I saw a lot of her work reflected this sort of neon light aesthetic. I think that style is very popular with youths today. Youths today, say like I'm like 80, but anyway, I think that's pretty hip right now, especially online. So I think it worked well in like a modern art sense. I see it used a lot with young adult comics. It's probably obvious the biggest draw for me in this book is the werewolves themselves. Werewolves are my favorite subgenre of monsters, and I think Sterl did a knockout job with their designs. They're a bit ganglier than the common werewolf, but they're definitely not as human dog looking as, say, Remus and Harry Potter. The creature's proportions translate well from how she draws the girls. They remind me a bit of the werewolves in Ginger Snaps, which is another example of female werewolves in media, and a movie I would highly suggest checking out if you're into it. The transitions were also nice from human to wolf. There's no gore-fest, full-spread transformation pages, but given how the rest of the book looks, I don't think that they would have needed them. Hi, this is me, post-editing. Something worth clarifying is that when I say there's, mild gore or it's pretty toned down, I do mean that there is still, blood and guts and stuff. It's just not on the level that you see with, slasher comics or movies or, horror movie-esque in its depiction. In my opinion, it's pretty mild as far as horror media goes. The overall panel-to-panel layout is pretty sharp. It matches how a lot of tween and young adult books are laid out nowadays. It kind of reminds me of online comics, like webtoons, where it's very square-oriented, but that's not new to comics. That's just something that I feel like I notice a lot more with modern art styles now. The posing can be a bit stiff at times, but Sterl does a really nice job at keeping it clean to read, which is what really matters. Nothing is overly detailed or complicated, and any violence there is kept pretty tame, especially with the more cartoonish tones of red for the blood. It doesn't read to me as real blood. It's very, again, 80s horror flick type of gore. I think this is a great option for people who want to take a step towards horror media without diving in. And for those who want the story but aren't necessarily fans of explicit gore. Okay, writing is where I point out that I'm not a teenager, and I also can't really judge how teenagers talk in this book. I thought Maggie Tokuda-Hall did a nice job with the writing. It didn't sound too much like an adult writing for high schoolers, but rather a dramatized version of how I kind of remember high schoolers talking when I was there. I can think of a lot of young adult graphic novels I have read lately that go overboard with sounding young, or trying to integrate age slang that puts a bad taste in my mouth while reading. Sometimes it gets a little too on the nose, like when Becca's having a conversation with her mom. We'll get sticky note thought bubbles of how Becca dissects the conversation. It doesn't really add anything plot-wise, I guess, but it does elaborate on their relationship and teen angst pretty well. Overall, I think it was a fun and easy read. They explain the rules of werewolfism pretty well. It's sort of the vague, generic werewolf setup, like the unquenchable hunger causing infighting and making the girls more irritated close to the full moon. That's a trope that's pretty common with werewolf media, but I thought it was handled nicely. We don't get a whole lot of background lore, but I do think it does a good job at imploring a full story, while also creating room for a spin-off or continuation, and that could be an area where we get more if, why, and when for the original werewolf group at their school. Sorry if I'm talking longer about art than writing, but writing really isn't my area of expertise. I feel like there are probably reviews online that can more thoroughly describe the pros and cons of Tokuda-Hall's style of writing. Overall feelings. Would I recommend Squad? Is this book good? Yes, I think it is. I've read it front to back twice, and I've enjoyed it both times. Would I recommend it to every werewolf fan? No. I think this is a very fun young adult book with girl power elements and a side of the supernatural. Earlier I compared it to Ginger Snaps, but Jennifer's Body also came to mind when I was reading it. Those movies have a similar premise of adding a female perspective to a male-oriented genre and creating something fresh with it. If you're interested in seeing female werewolves who don't sacrifice their femininity, aren't overly sexual, and want to fight the patriarchy in an exclusively teenage girl fashion, then I would highly suggest it. If any of those sound like they bother you, then I suggest you don't read it. Not every book needs to be for everybody, and this has a niche audience that I think will really like it if they're able to get their hands on it. I think the story's ending could leave people divided. It's wrapped up really nicely, and possibly establishes room for a spin-off or continuation. However, the way the characters' stories wrap up may not be everyone's cup of tea. Amanda's story ends differently than Becca's, who ends differently than Maddie's, and etc. Some get justice, some don't, and depending on how you felt about the characters, that could sway your opinion. This book is not tied up with a nice bow, and it's not all a happy ending. So if that's what you're expecting going into it, it may not be what you're looking for. Hey, thanks for checking out my review. This is my first time doing one of these, so I hope it came out well. I'm sure someone will let me know if it didn't. I've had a lot of thoughts and feelings on comics and graphic novels, so I want to put myself out there and try to make some sort of video about it. I'm recording this before I even start working on it, so I don't know how it looks. I hope it looks okay. I'm an artist who hopes to someday work in comics, so seeing such a creative book really is the coolest to me. Regardless of what I've said, I do think there are people that will enjoy this book. It's got a cool vibe and a nice aesthetic, and I feel like people sort of dig that, you know? This part is not as scripted as it should be. If you enjoyed the video, then please let me know and recommend other comics or anything you'd want me to talk about. If you hate it, feel free to do the opposite. Like, still let me know, but you can just tell me you hate it. It is what it is. You can hopefully find my social media in the description or in the comments if I remember to post them. Yeah, thanks again. Bye.